Okay, so we are at the point in the story where King Dashrata has ruled his kingdom for years and years, and he's ruled it righteously and judiciously. But he's getting older, and he knows that he needs to have an heir. So he goes to Vashista, the family priest, who is really Rama's first teacher. Vishwamitra is considered his guru, but Vashista, because they went to the four boys went to Vashista's his gurukula, his school, and that's where they during that time. So even if you were a warrior, you actually sought guidance and study from a Brahmin, so that the rulers were righteous rulers. So he knows, Dashrata knows that he's going to need to have an heir because he's going to be ready to retire. So he goes to Vashista. Vashista plans this huge yagya. And at the yagya, at the yagya, Lord Agni comes out of the fire and he hands Vashista 2 balls of this celestial pudding. And Dashrata has, some people say he has thousands of wives, and these are his 3 main wives, so we'll just focus on these 3 here. So he takes the pudding and he hands one to Kashali and he hands one to Bharat's mom, Kaikeyi. And they then divide their pudding and give one each, half of the pudding, to Sumitra. And Sumitra is the one who's going to have the twins. So at this point, let's go into understanding the names of them. So Dashrata is the one who has mastered the 10 senses. And the 10 senses are the indriyas that we talked about last week. So he's mastered the entrance doors and the exit doors, because you can't master the exit doors if you haven't mastered the entrance doors. So he's the one who has mastered the 10 senses. He is also the one that is completely full of devotion. And Kashalya, who is Rama's mother, she is the one with the keen intellect and the one who is completely free of negativity and completely selfless. And it was actually a boon that they had received, which we won't really go into today, but a boon that those 2 had received, that they would be the parents of Rama. In a previous lifetime, they had received this boon. And there was also a curse that Dashrata received, that he would lose a son and he would basically pine to death because of the loss of his son. So then you have Bharat's mother, who it means one who is equally full of compassion and one who is the same amount of passion. So you've got the compassion and the passion all in her, in one being. And then you have Sumitra, who is friend to all, a good friend to all. And she is the mother of Lakshman and Shatrugna. So now if you think about it, so Rama means complete happiness. And when you have the one who's mastered all the 10 indriyas, and you have the one who's full of devotion, and you have the one who is married, who is bringing together Rama, Kashalya, you have her she is the epitome of skillfulness in action. Because she has the keen intellect, but she's not selfish and she's free of negativity. So when you have those 2 coming together, then they create Rama. And this is saying that divinity lies within all of us, but we have to have the marriage we have to have the master over our 10 senses. We have to be full of devotion. We have to have that. This is why yoga is skillfulness in action. And it's not being skillful in maneuvering the position so that we come out on top. Because skillfulness in action requires us to be free of negativity and free of selfishness. Then it becomes skillful in action. We, especially in the West, I think we tend to think that being skillful in action is manipulating the situation so that we look good no matter what happens. So that things favor me no matter what happens. We think that is that skillfulness in action, which is completely mistaken, because if we are skillful in action, we're not negative and we're not selfish. Then we are very skillful in action. So Rama is the one that brings happiness. Do I have Rama up there? Oh yeah, pure happiness. So he is this resides within us. Pure happiness resides within us, and it happens when we are devoted and when we are not selfish and when we are giving and compassionate. And the thing to remember about Rama, so happiness, when you have pure happiness, then you have to have the other three brothers behind you, which we'll get into what each of those stand for. So then you have Bharat, who is second. So Rama was born first, so he technically was the rightful heir to the throne. So you have Bharat, who was born second, and when Kaikeyi, when she conceived Bharat, she was compassionate. And she's the one who is, when she is completely compassionate, she's saint-like. And when she goes into that mode of passion, then she becomes very restricted, very constricted. So you have either expansion or you have contraction. And that's where she represents. And when she's in that place of expansion, she has Bharat. Bharat is that complete love, that complete not attached to anything. So he is that place of where he can, what does he do? He stays outside the kingdom of Ayodhya. He's not attached to being king. That means nothing to him. How many of us, right, we want, we would want to have that kingdom to ourselves. So, but he's completely selfless. He's completely unattached to having that. So when she was in this state of expansion, then compassion came and it creates Bharat. But when we go into that place of contraction, then that passion, and then what happens when she contracts? She wants Bharat to be king and she wants Rama to be kicked out. So in our lives, maybe it's not that extreme, our contraction and expansion, but you need to watch it daily. How are you expanding and contracting? Because it happens, and you can feel it. When you start becoming more aware, you can feel that little in your heart. When someone asks you a question and you say no, and it should have just been an easy yes. You can feel that restriction. You can feel that pullback. You can feel that in your heart. And we've all felt those moments of that pure expansion where we just give. And it feels so good to just give. So we need to monitor ourselves because we want to have that ability to give all the time. Because that's what Swamiji was doing. He just gave all the time. And then you have Sumitra, who had Lakshman and Shatrugna. And Shatrugna represents humility. So when you have this friendship married to devotion, married to the control, the mastering of the 10 indriyas, then you have this humility. And the humility comes from, so this being a friend, humility comes from feeling that you are serving and not helping. If I help someone, it gives me the ability to get on a high horse. I've helped you, as opposed to I'm serving you. Very, very different. It keeps us humble. It keeps us in that place of humility. And then you have Lakshman, who is dedication, whose will, who is determination. He is the one, before they went into the forest, he sought Nidra, Devi Nidra, and asked her for a boon so that he could stay awake for 14 years. And if you think about that allegorically or symbolically, it's that we need to have our will and our determination to stay awake when we are fighting our demons, when we are in the middle of the battle, because we need to have this determination to watch over the soul and to watch over the intellect. So to watch over Rama and Sita, we need to have that determination. So he sought this boon to stay awake for the 14 years because his dedication was so strong. And you think about that in our own lives, how it's so easy to step back. It's so easy to say, I'm going to do this, right? This is my sankalpa. And then the day comes for us to do it, and we don't do it. And it's not just practice. When we say, okay, I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock and I'm going to do my practice, it's more than that. If you say that you are going to do something for someone, you do it. Because it's strengthening your dedication. It's strengthening that Lakshman energy, your will, your determination inside of you. So whatever you say, follow through with it. Unless some unforeseen circumstances comes your way, because that will keep you honest. That will keep you honest. If you don't want to do it, don't say you're going to do it. So if somebody says, hey, do you want to meet for coffee next week? Don't say yes, but inside you're thinking, oh, no, I really don't want to. It's better to say, no, I can't. We need to be very clear with what we say, because anytime we say something and there's this bit of untruth behind it, it weakens us. So then how can we be dedicated to those bigger practices within ourselves? This is where we have to start in our daily mundane existence. Constantly. This is, if I say I'm going to have 5 Triscuits, I have 5 Triscuits. I don't go over that. If I say I'm going to have 2 olives, I have 2 olives. I don't go over that. Whatever it is, because you have to have that determination. If we don't have determination in the little things, we will never have determination and willpower in the big things. This is kind of like, what did Jesus say? If you can't be trusted in the small things, you can't be trusted in the big things. So if I can't trust myself in setting a goal, so this is why baby steps are so important, then I'm never going to be able to meet the big, the grand, the lofty goal of knowing who I am. So all of these things lead us to needing to know ourselves. And then it gets us into the Panchamaya Kosha. And this is, so Pancha is 5, and this is the 5 sheaths that cover the inner self, which cover that pure happiness, that Rama within us. And the 5 sheaths, so the Panchamaya Kosha model, it's really important to think about that they all play on each other. They're all interconnected. It's not just, so first of all, the sheaths, are we all on the same page about the koshas? Maybe I'll start there. So the koshas are they're described as these opaque layers around our energy body, and basically around the heart. So you've got these opaque layers that they're, depending on where we are on the journey, they're less opaque or more opaque. Those are the only differences, because the true who we are at the deepest core of our being is all the same. So behind the 5 layers, we're all the same, because that's where the Atman is. So our layers are just different levels of opaqueness. So but they're all interconnected, and they all play with each other, and they all affect each other and impact each other. And you might think that, if I work on the Annamaya Kosha, then it's going to work back. It's true, it does, but actually the more subtle layers are the ones that have more power than the gross layers. So and this is where yoga and the yogis are, as we go through them, it's amazing. Everything is just so outlined. This is why yoga is a science. This is why yoga is not a religion. It is a systematic way to know yourself. And part of the koshas are very, very clear and a way to know yourself. So you've got the Annamaya Kosha, which is our gross, our physical layer, and it's the food layer. And it is the fact that we are food and we come from food. It is, and most of us start on the physical level as far as with the going to asana classes. That's where most of us start our journey to know ourselves. And part of that journey to know yourself is becoming more familiar with the body. Not in a way to make you more attached with the body, but understanding the body at a deeper level. And that's what happens when you're doing an asana class and you're feeling some area of tension or some area of stress, and you're like, oh, whoa. And we're getting to know the body at a deeper level. And an example of how we're more impacted from the subtle levels to the more gross level. Riley and I were having kind of a conversation that pertained to that this morning, but say that you have some ache, say that you have lower back ache, and you go to the chiropractor, you go get a massage, and suddenly you feel really good because you've got a massage, and maybe that really good feeling lasts for a week, but then it comes back. That's because we haven't addressed what is actually causing the lower backache. Because it is 80% of our aches and pains are psychosomatic. They come from the mind. So that is going to push all the way out into the food sheath. So it could be that, yes, I have a lower backache. I go get a massage. It goes away, but then it comes back because I've not addressed what is giving me the lower backache. I've not addressed the issue in the mind. This is where Western medicine, allopathic medicine, falls short from Ayurveda. Because if you go to a real Ayurvedic practitioner, if we all go in there for the same thing, for a lower backache, it's going to be diagnosed very differently than if you go to a Western doctor and say, oh, I've got a lower backache, and then he's going to give you whatever, some sort of muscle relaxant and send you on your way. And he's going to give Riley that, and he's going to give Linda that. Or maybe he's going to give us a shot of some steroid to help. But it's not going to be tailored to what is actually causing it. So then the koshas, then you get into the doshas. It's much more connected. So if we have, and this is where when we get into the physical part of the asana, we do become aware. This is where certain stress is held in different places in the body. That's just the way it is. And from teaching classes all over, I have noticed that we tend to, as a group of humans, hold similar stresses in similar parts of the body. But that is, once again, how we are all interconnected. It's not 100%, but it's enough there to know that there is this deep interconnection with all of us. So we want to be able to get into the root of the problem. So when we start working with the Annamaya kosha, we want to have an asana practice, but we want to have a routine. A routine is really good. We want to have so that we want to watch the food that we're eating. We want to be really mindful of what it is. So say that, once again, this is how the mind says, how they're all kind of interconnected. The mind says, oh, I want to grab some beer and pizza. And the body's like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. But then if we have our intellect, when we get to the Vijnanamaya kosha, we might say, the wisdom might say, you know what, if you do that, your belly's going to hurt, and you're not going to feel good, and you're going to feel groggy, and you won't be able to get up for your practice tomorrow, and all these other things, and it might change that. But this is where if we don't have control of those 10 senses from the inner, more subtle levels, it's going to really impact the gross level, the physical being. So this is going back to, so then we go to the pranamaya kosha, and this is, I'm going to have you read that. This is just a little inkling, but the prana is so key.
Almost everyone has felt the influences of stress at some point during life, perhaps relating to a situation at school, work, or in one's family. Although the stresses in our environment cannot be controlled, our reaction to them can be. Breath can be used as a very powerful tool in the regulation of both the mind and body, and thus also in the reduction of stress. Most people, however, have never observed their own process of breathing. Its qualities and patterns have remained unknown, hidden in the unconscious mind. Although the breath is maintained by unconscious mechanisms in the body, it can be brought under our conscious control and unhealthy breathing habits can be corrected. In doing this, one can decrease the level of stress in one's life and feel more balanced and relaxed. Despite the obvious importance of the breath, the majority of us have poor breathing patterns, which disturb us physically, mentally, and emotionally. These improper breathing habits thus create stress and can eventually lead to other imbalances and complications. The importance of good breathing is paramount, for it continually provides us with nourishment and cleanses our body. The oxygen inhaled is utilized by every cell of our body. When this gas exchange does not take place efficiently, the entire pulmonary cardiovascular system must work harder in order to properly oxygenate the body. By paying attention to one's breath, one can become aware of its irregularities and dysfunctions. Observe your own breathing for a moment, and you may notice pauses and jerks that interrupt its flow. The breath should be allowed to flow smoothly. Pauses and jerks arise from poor breathing habits and disturb the nervous system. These irregularities in the breath can be corrected with consistent, daily practice of smooth, even breathing, which in turn will give rise to greater control over their respiratory motion and lead to a state of mental and physical calmness and alertness. H.H. or His Holiness Sri Swami Rama.
You can say H. But this is, so we go from the gross and then we go into the prana, which is the energy body. And so when we're in class and we say you can direct the breath into an area that's feeling stress or tension or whatever, you're actually directing the prana there, because we can't actually direct the breath and send it to my knee that's hurting, but I can direct the prana to that area. And this is where Swamiji has talked about the more things have been healed by the breath than what we even realized. But this means we have to have control of the breath. This is where the breath is easier to manipulate than the mind. But we're not even aware of how our breathing patterns are. I mean, we need to, if we could sit 5 minutes a day, maybe twice a day, 3 times a day, you would start to see changes happen. And because if you are manipulating the flow of the breath, what you are doing is actually, this is where Swamiji says that the breath is your own form of psychotherapy. Because the breath tells you, is an indicator of the mind, what's happening in the mind, and it's an indicator of what's happening in the body. The breath is that link that gives us the clue of what's happening in the mind. We're aware of those big breath things. We're aware of when we're angry or when we're sad, but you need to start becoming more mindful of what is happening to the breath. Put a sign up somewhere that says breathe. Just breathe. And just when you see it, even if it is just taking one fluid breath with no sound, no jerks, no pauses, make it long and fluid. Just do a couple rounds like that and start to notice what happens, because otherwise we're going to keep going to get fixed, but it's not going to fix us, because we've got to change the energy. The breath, so you have the prana and you have the consciousness, and they're basically the same coin, just 2 different sides. So if you're uncomfortable in the body that you are in, that's because you're uncomfortable with the way you breathe. If you want to be more comfortable in the body, then change the way you breathe. It's quite simple. And the yogis are telling us this. So when we start becoming more aware of the breath, then the physical body starts to change, meaning that the stress that I was holding in my lower back starts to dissipate. But you have to become aware of, why am I holding that stress in my lower back? Where is it coming from? And it could be, chances are really, really, really high, it's not just one lifetime. This stress is causing these aches and pains in the body. These are things that we've carried throughout lifetimes. It's no different than a person who has been killed a certain way, and they have a birthmark where, maybe there was a bullet wound, a shot that came out, or a stab or something, and they'll have a birthmark in that area. So if we could create birthmarks based on a moment of death, then we certainly can have an ache that follows us. We want to blame our parents for the woes that we have in this lifetime. It's taken us millions of lifetimes to become the way we are. And to give a set of parents in this lifetime, or to give your partner in this lifetime the power for making you miserable, that's giving a few people a lot of power. Because we've carried these things. So it really, this is the other thing that Riley and I were talking about. One of the things that I feel that changed my relationship with my practice was my pranayama, my breath awareness practice. I feel like that changed my connection to the practice, to my personal practice. And I'm nowhere near where, at some point I will be, but it definitely has changed my relationship with myself and my relationship with the practice, which then changes the relationship with myself even more. And then we go into the manomaya, which is the mind. Manas is mind. And this is, once again, so one of the best ways to soothe the mind is through mantra repetition. But one of the best ways to get to that place of mantra repetition is viveka and vairagya, that discrimination and dispassion. Because the mind will gravitate to the world. The senses will pull the mind in. And if we start developing that viveka, we start developing that dispassion, and we just start developing that discrimination, then we'll realize that the world doesn't soothe us. It's actually the mantras that soothe us. So the mind, but we have to train the mind. This is where, an untrained mind is not fit for any path. We need to train the mind. We need to get rid of the confusion in the mind. And this is where we have our samskaras and our vasanas. So this is in the mind. Now we can see why that it's impacting the prana and the physical body so much. Because these are things that we've taken with us. These are the most embedded impressions that we are so married to, that we take with us lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Anger, this feeling of lack, this feeling of sadness, this feeling of being a victim. We've taken these with us lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So of course they're going to be stronger. But when we start, this is why they have to all work together. They're so interconnected. When you start to clean one, the other one starts to clean, and the other one starts to clean, and the other one starts to clean. But you have to start working on some level. And this is, question yourself, but then this goes into the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is that of wisdom. You could think of it as buddhi. And this is where the yogis, once again, they gave us, because it is so important, the yamas and the niyamas are how we tune, tone our Vijnanamaya kosha, by studying the yamas and the niyamas, by asking ourselves daily, was I injurious with my thought, speech, and action? Did I lie with my thought, speech, and action today? Did I steal with my thought, speech, and action today? This is, even though it's so close to the Anandamaya kosha, it's right there, but on our yamas and niyamas, it's 1 and 2. That tells you the importance of working with the yamas and the niyamas so that we can get into, and how that is going to lead to better asana and better pranayama. But yet it's what's going to work with our Vijnanamaya kosha. It's really amazing. Like when you think about how everything is so laid out and so systematic, and how everything is just, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. It's pretty exciting that we just have to study this stuff. We just have, not just study it, but we have to put it into examination into our lives constantly. And then you get into the Anandamaya kosha, and it's this thinnest layer of the sheaths. And it is the layer that it is the only thing that keeps us from the self. And it's the thinnest layer, and it is that bliss. Ananda is bliss. And if you've heard of people when they die, they talk about that bright light, the white light that feels so encompassing and so welcoming and so peaceful. They've tapped into their Anandamaya kosha. That's all it is. And for me, when you hear these stories, it's like, but don't you want to know more about where that came from? Don't you want to know that you could get that all the time instead of just when you almost died? Because it's there. It's right above. It's this super thin, almost crystal clear layer right above the self that is inside all of us. It's just there. It's that sheath of bliss. And then the other thing, like when you work with these, so it's not just that it's that the sheath of bliss, right? That where we have that encompassing, that white light that brings us together, that feels this so compassionate, but it's also our ability to experience joy on a daily basis too. But if my mind is really clouded and I'm so pulled into the world with all of my desires, with all of my need for sense gratification, then I'm not going to be able to enjoy a sunset. It's when I was in Utah 2 years ago, and hiking at Bryce Canyon. And it was amazing to me because there's such a feeling when you're there. You're like, whoa. It gets you right in the heart. It's just this magical thing. And there was some ladies that were coming down behind, and they were just bitching about life. I don't even remember what they were bitching about. It was like, wow, you're in this incredibly beautiful place, but you can't see it. But that's all of us in life, right? We have these incredibly beautiful experiences that God has given us, ourself, that has given us so that we can move through them, so that we can experience the true self, but we don't see it as beautiful. And if I can't see something in nature as beautiful, I certainly won't be able to see what life has given me as beautiful. Then I go back to seeking that help outside of myself to take care of my problems. I have to take care of my stuff. I have to take care of my problems. This is what it's so beautiful when Swamiji says, I'm someone you can lean on, but teaches you not to lean. Think of yoga. Yoga is something we can lean on, but teaches us not to lean, so that we can get to that place where we have that bliss. And then the step beyond that, which is the self. So when we get through all of these sheaths, all of these koshas, what lies in all of us is the self. And this is what the yogis describe as that pure silence, that Satchidananda. So it's that beyond the bliss. So, we want to, as we interplay throughout the day, we want to ask yourself, how is my mind affecting my body right now and what I'm doing, my actions right now? How is my mind affecting my breath? Okay, so let me change the way I breathe. So now let's see what's happening with the mind. Now let's see what's happening with the body. Then you add in the yamas and the niyamas, and you start really examining things. The whole world begins to open up for us. And then it really does become this beautiful journey. And then at some point, we will experience that Anandamaya kosha. And then at that point, we're never right there. We're just a little bit away from that pure self of what we are. This is why the practice is so important. And this is, you don't want to, so you can have, the Jnanamaya kosha, which is very different. Wisdom is very different than information. So you can have someone who can quote scriptures and who can do all of these wonderful things and who's extremely worldly intelligent, but if they don't have the wisdom to examine through yamas and niyamas, and if they can't move past that, then they're never going to experience the self, because it's all going to be going outwards. All right.